Cannoness Kathlina raised her voice to her assembled sisters in the PDF forces arrayed behind the crude barricades outside the doors of the Cathedral of the Emperor Triumphant. "Not a single heretic walks through those doors while one of us yet live, comrades." "In the Emperor's name!" roared the crowd. When the shelling began and the Imperial forces began dying around her, the crowd still roared, "In the Emperor's name!" as the cultist hordes charged into the great plaza and the battle truly began. They still roared, "In the Emperor's name!" When the crimson-armoured traitor Astartes began joining the battle and the Imperials were started to be forced back, they still kept up the chant, "In the Emperor's name!" Even after the first, second, and third lines of Imperial defense broke, the Imperials kept up that chant, "In the Emperor's name!" When the hordes of Neverborn joined the fight, and the battle was driven to the very steps of the great cathedral, they still cried, "In the Emperor's name!" As Kathlina began to fight personally, crashing her blade against the plate of traitor Astartes and cutting through the thick hide of Neverborn abominations, she and the others still roared, "In the Emperor's name!" After Kathlina's blade broke and the defenders of the cathedral were reduced to less than a dozen, they still cried out, "In the Emperor's name!" And even after Kathlina became the last defender of the cathedral, desperately keeping the traitors at bay with bursts of fire from one of her dead sister's flamers, she still roared out alone, "In the Emperor's name!" When the traitor attack had ceased, and a horde of heretics gathered in the plaza before her and began chanting an inhuman chant, Kathlina did not despair. Standing alone amongst a horde of the dead, she bent down and picked up a fresh fuel canister from one of her dead sisters for her flamer. Looking up as the inhuman chanting became louder, Kathlina saw what was coming for her, a giant demonic monster, golden skin with eyes of fire, and a horned head. A giant, oversized maul grasped in its taloned hands. Kathlina stood alone in the doorway of the cathedral as the giant demon strode forward, heralded by chants from the heretics, "Urizen! Urizen! Urizen!" Kathlina ignored all that was happening around her and calmly loaded a fresh canister into her flamer, braced her feet, gritted her teeth, and ignited the pilot flame of her weapon. And still she spoke, in a quiet but determined voice, the chant that had heralded the battle, "In the Emperor's name!"